Welcome back to How to Tickle Yourself. I'm your host, Duff McDonald, along with my co-host, Joey of Rockledge. Today's guest is our newest friend. I first met Jeremy Toback over Zoom several weeks ago. Our mutual friends Peter Barrett and Jeff Gordonier thought we'd hit it off, and we did. I like Jeremy so much that I wrote a story about his remarkable music career, which we'll get to in a moment, for the website Medium. It's called The Algorithm of Love. Check it out when you get a chance. Jeremy lives in Los Angeles, and when Joey and I decided on a whim to go see Willie Nelson's 90th birthday party at the Hollywood Bowl at the end of April, we asked Jeremy if he was around, and he was. So we had dinner with him and went to see some other musicians, the Rose City Band, at a club called Zebulon while we were there. And after that, like I said, he became our newest friend. Jeremy's one half of the Hush indie folk group, Renee and Jeremy. In addition to writing a lot of their own music, the duo turns popular songs into delightful little lullabies. Their latest is Madonna's Lucky Star. But they also write great originals. One of them, Here and Now, sounds a lot like the theme song here at How to Tickle Yourself. One of us must have stolen the idea from the other one. Or more likely, we are singing from the same songbook about things like presence and the vital importance of focusing on what's happening to you in this very moment. Renee and Jeremy have been releasing singles from their latest album, Shout, a cover of the great Tears for Fears hit in recent weeks. The entire album's due out this summer. It's a winner. Check it out on Spotify. One thing that's been tickling Jeremy recently is that a music career he put on hold a decade or so ago is in a bit of a resurgence thanks to the algorithm. We'll talk to him about that. But the most important thing that's happened to him lately is that he met Joey and me. His life is only going to get better from here. Welcome to the show, new friend. We are glad to have you.
Wow, I'm glad to be here. I love that intro.
Congratulations.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now, right here, right now, whoa, right here, right now.
So I want to start. I have a question.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, you were in grunge, and now you're in Hush indie folk. How does that happen?
First of all, I just love that I was in grunge. That's such a
I'm very musical.
It's such a delicious and ugly phrase. I was always, to the extent that I was in grunge, I was sort of an unlikely person to be swept up in it. Like I never really fit, which is probably why that band, Brad, with the guy from Pearl Jam, Stone, and some other talented folks, Sean and Regan, probably in part why it sounded the way it did. Like I was into the music I've always been into. I was just as into Nick Drake and Johnny Hartman and John Coltrane and Van Morrison then as I am now. I just ended up being asked to be in this thing. And so with all these guys that were into 70s stadium rock and punk. So I guess that's the first answer, is that I was a little bit of a fish out of water, but in water then. And then I guess I could build a bridge to it, which is that when it came time, when Renee asked me to contribute a song to her lullaby record that she was going to make, this was in 2006, I had written a song for my first son called Welcome to This World, and it wasn't really written for any sort of release. It was just a song that came out of me for him. Miles, now 22. That song was coming out of that space. And when Renee and I ended up making the record together, which is a whole other story we don't need to get into, or we could, it was very much, we were just like, let's make a record by people we love, like Nick Drake and Elliott Smith, only with non-suicidal lyrics. Not that we love the darkness that those folks were singing about and coming from, but it wasn't appropriate for this particular.
So would it be appropriate to say that parenthood changed music for you?
Yes, in a sense that, like, not what I loved about music, but in that particular time, actually, I wasn't really able to make my own music. I'd been so freaking slaughtered by my experience in the mainstream music business, and just heartbroken by it, that I couldn't have made music for myself or what I considered my own music. The only way I could make music at that time was like singing to my kids and then in other people's kids. So it opened up a space that I didn't know existed. And I didn't for a long time even consider it. It's weird. The human psyche is so weird. Like I considered it this other thing. I was like, well, this is Renee Jeremy, but that's not really my music. I don't know. I mean, it feels completely foreign now, but that's the way I felt for a long time. And, but it was the only music I could make at the time. And I'm kind of amazed by what it's done. And so, yeah.
So let's talk about that. In the piece I wrote about you, one of the things we focused on, you and I talked about a lot about how remarkable it is. You in the last decade, during which time you guys, like during a time when you didn't release new music,
right?
You garnered millions of listens on Spotify.
Yeah.
And essentially the algorithm seems to have served you up to people who might not otherwise have found you, especially when you're not putting out new music, and has in a sense resuscitated you guys had a string of albums early, like 2007, 8, 9, or 10 or something, and then went on hold. And the would you put it this way? The algorithm has brought you back from hiatus.
Brought me back from the dead. Yeah, I would say yes. Pandora is a big part of that too, by the way, for those who care. But actually, all of them, weirdly, like all of Amazon, Apple, like for some reason, it resonated on all those streaming platforms. I would say that is true. I think that I definitely had an intention of making music again, but it had been very solidly shelved. And Renee, in particular, like year after year, would be like, "Hey, I kind of want to do something. You want to do some new Renee and Jeremy music?" And so 2011 was when I just was like, I'm going to go write these commercial treatments for commercial directors and focus on making money and try and keep my marriage together and do all this stuff that's important, and was very important, is important. And every year she'd be like, "Hey, let's make a record," and I'd be like, "The band is not broken up, but I can't right now." And that was happening for a number of years, literally, until two things, which is, yes, to your point, suddenly we had millions and millions. I mean, we have like 200 million plus streams. It's crazy. That was one thing, but that wasn't even really enough. It was because I was just in my mode The other thing was that I was starting to write songs again. Like I'd become a fan of music again, and which was beautiful. Like my sort of heartbreak around music was healing during this time because I wasn't doing it and trying to do it. So that was a second element. And then the third element was the plague, which was very bad for many people, and even people very dear to me, and therefore challenging for me. But there were aspects of it that were incredible for me. And one of them was that Renee and our producer, Rich, double teamed on me and were like, let's make a record. I didn't really say no. I hope that was a concise, I never give concise answers. Sorry.
So one of the reasons you and I connected at first, aside from learning about your story and loving your music, was some talk about spirituality.
Yep.
And I was wondering, so if you went through two phases, an early career sort of disappointment of your solo career, and then the sort of the hiatus of Renee and Jeremy. How'd your spirituality practice help you through the ups and downs of a music career like that?
It's interesting because my sort of yoga practice began really to sort of like restore my nervous system when it was completely sort of destroyed during the major label phase of my career. And at first, I think it was about like really just trying to deal with maintaining it, like to give me something that would ground me enough so that I could sort of survive it. And then I think as these things potentially can be, right, if you're really open to the practice, it can lead you to places you didn't expect to go. And so I would say that my spiritual practice, along with some help with from she's technically my rabbi, but she was also like a, guide, like a coach or whatever, like opened me up to the idea that that there were some things I needed to attend to besides music, and that I could actually prioritize those things and it would help in what I was trying to do in my life. I mean, basically, in the most crude sense, get a job, but like get a career, like find a way to be in this world, which has been, for me to be etheric and tapping into like the infinite and like writing, like finding wild phrases floating through me has not been the biggest challenge in my life. The biggest challenge is like, how do I navigate this fucking world the way it is? I hope cussing is okay. And so eventually that's what my spiritual practice ironically helped me do, is just kind of ground and like, okay, I need a career, and what could I do that I would actually maybe not hate, but actually like a little bit and be good at, and that could pay for life in LA and kids, and now ex-wife who likes things and stuff. So,
it's sort of like, I feel like the spiritual practice is kind of, it's like the platform for everything. Like I need that. I need it to, like you're talking about grounding, and it's like, I need to meditate and do yoga and take care of my body. But it's like, there's like a sort of a hierarchy, I guess, for me, that I need to, there's some things I have to do. And if I don't, then nothing else seems to work right in my life. Unfortunately, we have a pretty good setup here,
You guys do have a good setup. And like, different people's journeys are different, right? Like, it's fascinating. It's like Duff, you had a very, like, you were very in the material world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is why, I mean, maybe probably partly why we vibe. I'm like, wow, that's so wild. We came from totally different directions,
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like, spare me the material world.
And
I didn't know anything else existed.
Right.
All right, let's talk music for a sec. You guys are you know, a lot of people do great covers of other people's music. You guys have carved out a whole new way of covering other people's music and have illuminated so many songs. You know what? I think I brought this up to you. Sturgill Simpson covered that 80s song, The Promise, on one of his albums, and it was like a revelation. It turned a song that I thought was a joke into a great piece of art. And I was like, oh my God. You guys have made you have turned covers into a high art form. Tell us how you think about covering people. How do you what do you do? How do you decide? And then also, what's the process? You got it's because every single one you do is a delight.
Oh, thank you, man. And thank you for the Sturgill Simpson cover, because I freaking love it.
Right? It's great.
Yeah.
He resurrected a song that was in the dustbin of history, and that most people, if you'd heard it, you would have been like, oh my God, that song. And he showed us that there's beauty in it.
But that I think I was listening to your album the other day in the car, and every single song, it was happening like that for me. I was like, oh my God, it's so poetic. It's beautiful. And they're also gentle. So it's like I could sing along and be so happy in the car having a sing along and not feel all jacked up, just feel very serene and very calm. And I was like, whoa, it blew my mind.
That's
You're doing the Lord's work out there.
That's so beautiful. So I'll try. I mean, this is like an evolved process, which I guess you would guess. I mean, it doesn't, the funny thing is, like, the songs are so simple, the way we present them in the end, right? They're like these very spare things. So but what is behind it is not simple.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was guessing. That's what I wanted to know.
Which is a beautiful trick. Like, I love that about it. So, like, the first thing is that we stumbled, like Renee and Jeremy, we sort of stumbled on everything in it. We stumbled on this music to begin with. We knew each other, but we stumbled on working together. Like, everything was, there's this thing in Beshert in Judaism is like, it is written, you know, in other traditions, fate, whatever. Like, it's like almost like it was meant to be. And one thing, by making music for children, it put us into a certain mode and a certain, like, tenderness. And there's a cover on the first record of Three Little Birds by Bob Marley, which is a friggin' beautiful song, period. And Bob Marley is a Bava spiritual, you know, seer, in my opinion, not only my opinion, but like, that version is also just very gentle and incredibly quiet and spare. And like, we did that intuitively and didn't really know what we were doing. And then realized over the years that our music was not only resonating with kids, it was really resonating with parents. And not only parents, it was also resonating with people who weren't parents. And there was something going on with this music that, to your point, was like, it was soothing people. It was, but maybe not just relaxing them like some, I don't know, like Ryan Eno and Daniel Lanois Apollo music, which is also super relaxing and beautiful, but like touching them. And the feedback we were getting was like, oh, this is like addressing people's inner child. Like, there's some healing, deeper thing going on from the fact that, from the intentionality behind this music, that potentially people were accessing. And so then that's a big chunk. And the first slate of records were made without that awareness. They were just made. And it was kind of like, oh, blah, 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 we made them. And then when it came time to make, but there was some intentionality to the covers on obviously on A Little Love, which was the last record we made in 2011. So that was just kind of like, what songs can we do that have lyrics that are literally about love, that we can embrace and do in our style, or some were not. I mean, we did. I never remember the title of Simon and Garfunkel song, "Feeling Groovy," because it's like I remembered as "Feeling Groovy" because I was a kid when I fell in love with that song. That's not really necessarily a love song; it's just about feeling groovy. But everything else was just kind of like a love song, and that's or Shiny Happy People, just something that felt like we could do. And there were enough songs out there that we didn't really have to get into the process. Flash forward to making the newer records. Our kids are older. Renee still has she still had like a pre-tween, now a full-on tween when we made A Whole Lot of Love, but still, like, they're not little kids. And like, then it became a process of like a more complex process of like, okay, what can we get away with? Or how can we transform this? Or, you know, like, even though it ended up being the title track, but like Rich, our producer on Whole Lot of Love, was like, I think you guys could do that Zeppelin song. And I was like, really? Like, you need coolin'? I mean, this is like the most friggin' like sexual song ever. And that is not a vibe. Like, we're not trying to do that here. And I love the way that came out. It came out very gently and beautifully. And so, and there's songs that have been obvious, like it's like, oh, Fly Like an Eagle, which will be on this record. Like, that's just a beautiful lyric, and we can just sing that in a beautiful way. Shout, to your point, like there's some dark lyrics in the verses, the Tears for Fears version, which are perfect for its version, and we sort of edit. You can technically, when you're covering a song, you can't change the words, but you can leave parts out. So we left some parts out, and then we were like, and I'm going to stop after this because I've been going on and on. I could say a lot more, but like, there's this lyric, I really want to break your heart, in that song. And we were both just kind of like, oh, that's really beautiful. Like, if we can really lean into this idea of breaking your heart open, and how that is like a process of awakening on all levels, and just make it the most sort of heartfelt, gentle thing. And that became kind of the centerpiece of that song, which is about shouting and letting your feelings out. But which feelings are you like, you know, with a wide open heart?
It's like you changed the intention behind it.
I don't know what their intention is, but yes, I think it is probably different. They were definitely into some therapeutic things, but they were kind of like, just shout and get it out, right? And yeah, and we sort of did a different twist. Yeah,
I love the fact that it still tickles my funny bone every time I see it, because it's in their whisper mode. So the title of the album is Shout, but with a small S. Shout.
And an exclamation.
Yeah, shout. What about Sweet Child of Mine? That's a genius call. How'd you decide to do that?
So yeah, that was very much right. So that is from Whole Lot of Love, and that was in this mode. We actually put a shout out, sorry, to our fans on Instagram, and we're kind of like, hey, does anybody have any suggestions? We were already like way into making the record and had a bunch of ideas, and somebody said Sweet Child of Mine, and that their husband sang it to their kid every night, and we're like, oh, that's really beautiful. And it was as simple as that. And all those lyrics worked, respun. We didn't take anything out. And it was just really, I was just like, well, this is obvious. Renee needs to be, so, you know, we co-lead singers, and there's like, we each sort of step a little bit forward at different times. And that was when I was like, well, very obviously this is a Renee moment. Like, there's no way I'm doing this one. Like, you
just reminded me there. My daughter is 14, and the first we bought her a little record player when she was like 6 or 7, and the first album I bought her was Sam Cooke's Greatest Hits, because I was trying to get her to. I was trying to transition her into music that I liked, as away from like Raffi. I didn't know about you guys. I wish I had, but she she told us like last year that took my baby to the hop last night, right? That's the thing. She thought, and because of that, in other songs, she thought baby meant child. So she thought that because I had given her the album, she thought that the song was about taking your kid to the dance, not taking your baby to the dance. So she said for years she thought when people were referring to baby in songs, it was actually their baby.
Which is beautiful. And we definitely do take advantage of that. Right. That's beautiful. I love that. You know, I mean, like, the funny thing about Sweet Child of Mine, we can talk about other things, but it's just like, it kind of killed me what happened to that song, and like the where do we go from here part, which is this is also like the beautiful part of this process, is like it surprises you, like you don't know where it's gonna go, and you put a lot of like we think and then you're like, whoa, like in the original it's so just caveman, like, you know, like, and it's perfect. I mean, that song obviously works. And then for us, it became just this like heart-wrenching, like, hey, what are the possibilities and what could we do together? And what are we going to do? Because it's sung to a child, you know, where are you going to go? Like, there's this real like sorrow and sweetness in it. And every time we sing it live, it kind of kills me. Like I almost cry. And it's Guns N' Roses song.
I think your whole album was sort of doing that to me, because I got to sing, and it was just like I felt so connected and open, and it was really just amazing.
That's
Loved
beautiful. It. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's exciting. It's like an exciting time because it's also like there's a where do we go from here in terms of with Renee and Jeremy and what the music is going to like as we play it live. Like, played our house the other night and people suddenly started singing along the Madness song, and which is on the new, and it was so sweet, like just all these people singing along to our house. And the original is really sweet too, but it's very hyper, so it's like there's interesting things afoot.
So you and I have on that note, you and I spoke about you've had a couple incoming inquiries from so-called record labels that are basically noticing the numbers, the streaming numbers. They're not. Well, actually, maybe I'm wrong, but my guess is that you didn't hit their radar because someone was like, "Oh my God, listen to this album." What they did was someone said, "Look at these numbers. Let's go talk to these guys." And you've been reluctant so far, or at least the discussions haven't gone anywhere because you're not sure that these guys, for given the trade-offs in music contracts, can do what you guys are already doing yourselves. So what, like, are you a self, like, how do you go back on a label after your previous experiences, and also the fact that, well, here you are and you don't have, like, you've self-produced. So who's going to lure you back?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I think that I know we're definitely open to the idea of partnering with other people. And we do have some partnerships, but they're not that kind of a marriage. Like, it's like we have somebody who represents us for sync licensing, and that's easy because it's just, if they get something, they get a percentage, right? It's not a commitment. Right. It's like a polyamorous situation without the complications, without the jealousy. So yes, you're exactly right. So far, I mean, and it's very flattering. Like, there've been several. We just got another one the other day, which I haven't even written them back yet because I'm trying to figure out how to write them back. People have noticed the streaming numbers and they've come in, and it feels like most of them are, or maybe all of them are, really just, it's money that's out there floating around the world that's looking for investment. And ironically, there's things in the music business, like it's like, hey, we can invest in like these guys, like they've got a return. And so they just want to buy a piece or all of it and then get the annual, the money that comes in annually. And some of them are making a pitch about growing it. And we sort of went down conversations with one that was kind of serious, but just the numbers didn't make sense. Like, because once you actually start making money in the music business that isn't just on advances, which it was my whole major label career, it was just like, here's some advance money, now go starve. You start to look at it as, okay, this is actually a business and this makes money. So like, if you're going to come in and own a piece, I guess you need to make it make more money, or what are we doing? Like, I don't need to get some, sure, I could use some cash today to take care of whatever, always, but I don't need to take that cash today and then next year have less. That doesn't make any sense. So that's one piece. And then I think conceivably there are partnerships out there that would be like, I know people that have deals like Father John, my partner, one of my producing partners on my solo stuff, like he does roadie work and plays guitar with Father John Misty, and that guy's got a good record deal. So like with Sub Pop, like I would take a Father John Misty deal,
So would I. I don't even play an instrument.
Yeah, I'll take that deal. So yeah, we'll just see what happens. We could probably use help. Because anything could be done better maybe, but like it's chugging along and growing. So,
And what's your, so like you said, I said millions. You corrected me. Hundreds of millions of streams.
It's hundreds of millions, stuff.
Yeah, we hear it out of Tickle Yourself. We're trying to divorce ourselves from numbers, but those are some crazy numbers. What is the incoming for you from fans? Do you hear from them? How do you hear from them? Like in a streaming world where, you guys don't do a huge amount of live shows. You haven't been on like a big tour recently. Like
Right.
How do your fans get in touch with you?
So yeah, we get DMs on Instagram. People slide into our DMs, with some like heartfelt thoughts. Truthfully, they do actually. So it's funny, like I think that we got more feedback in the old analog days. We probably got less, but we got more. We got emails back then, right? So yeah, people come into our DMs, and oftentimes we'll get crazy, like amazing, just stories about. The most common one is still like, oh, I raised my kids on this. They still love it, and they're teenagers. But there'll be things like, this young woman who I don't even think is an adult was just Night Mantra was her favorite song growing up. And she ended up singing it to her aunt while her aunt was transitioning.
Oh.
Mm.
And kind of go, what?
Right.
You just go like, oh my, it's amazing that people do it, and they do it in the numbers that they do with as they're raising their kids. And those, I don't want to be blasé about that. Those things are moving, and we get those emails a lot about this means so much. It's our family's music. It's incredible that people welcome them in. That one just kind of floored me. So,
Joey.
Yes, sir.
What are you doing? Are you listening to Renee and Jeremy?
I was
on
listening.
The side
I was
there
listening.
Through your headphones?
what?
No, I'm listening. I'm listening to Jeremy.
Let's talk yoga real quick. There's a asana practice. But you mentioned to me Yogananda, who we've been having a little thing with recently. We listened to Autobiography of a Yogi on Audible over several months. We sort of follow a Yogananda meditation practice now that he prescribes in his lessons. What's it? Where are you on? Who are your for listeners who are interested? Where are who do you draw inspiration from in terms of the you know, whether it's a yogi, a guru, whatever? Who are your favorites these days?
So like, I would say that there were 3 big influences on me initially, and they're just like a part of the background now. And one of them has had some unfortunate revelations about some shenanigans which are serious, but the teachings are still the teaching. So Yogananda, for sure, that floored me. Reading Autobiography of a Yogi, like, kind of, I just felt that dude's presence so radically when I was reading it, and the things that he was talking about, like they were just like going down and buying a latte, you know, with oat milk latte or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you know, I saw my guru at the temple. Then we were walking at the beach and we saw him again. And we were like, ha ha, how are you here?
It is a wild,
don't you know space and time are not real? Like, the fact that I was having this incredible, when I read that book, and I was both it felt so revelatory, and the things that he was talking about really opened me up to a way of being. Yogi Bhajan and Kundalini Yoga, with all those caveats, that practice really helped bring me into my body in a certain way. It's a very physical practice, and then Hazrat Inayat Khan's writings on music and spirituality. He's a Sufi mystic. Initially, when I was really like didn't have a practice, that was like my very first, I think, spiritual writings, where I was like, whoa. I don't know if you know his writings, and you've got them, of course, on that show.
I don't. I have one Sufi, and it's not him.
He's here somewhere.
Yeah.
Hazrat Inayat Khan. I think it's one of those things like you can pick up any record. They're all good. The thing I've been most into now is like really not even associated with any particular teacher. I've been very into Ho'oponopono, which is the Hawaiian forgiveness practice, and a little evangelical about it. Forgive me.
Can you talk about it for just a second? Can you tell us a little bit about it? Because I've heard, like, I know of it, but I don't really know much.
Please evangelize to us.
Okay, I'm going to evangelize. I'll tell you about this, and then I'm going to give you an anecdote of my experience. Or maybe I should give you how I got into it first. Which would you prefer? Do you care?
How you got into it first.
Okay. How I got into it. This is good. It's juicy. Because it's always like some bad shit that gets you into something, right? So I was in this band, Brad. We've mentioned it before, with Stone from Pearl Jam. Sean Smith was the singer. He's now deceased. Rest in power. Beautiful soul. And Regan Hagar's the drummer. And it was like this cult 90s thing. And had we made a really dope record, I have to say, that people do love. And it had stature because there's a guy from Pearl Jam. It was a terrible relationship. My relationship with those guys just sucked. And I was not even active in the band. And it was like continually sucking. And I had all these resentments and all this, like, I think, is it the Buddhists who call it Shempa? I don't know. I think it's this term. It's like the sticky, icky stuff that connects you to something. And my rabbi, coach, whatever, therapist, I was like, why is it like whenever like these guys email, whatever, it's always like bad feelings. Like, I haven't even played with them for years. Like, what do I do? Like, I'm tired of this. And she's like, you should try, this Ho'oponopono practice of forgiveness. Just try it, doing it every day for a few months and see what happens. And I was like, okay, I'll try anything. Why not? And there's different ways of doing it, or like the 4 phrases. Like the way I do it is, I'm sorry. I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I might have just actually reversed one of those. I don't think it matters, to be honest. The 4 sentiments are incredibly important, and I'll tell you why in a second after I finish the story. So I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. See, I reversed it again. I did it for, I didn't even really know what it meant. I was like, that's kind of funny that I'm asking them to forgive me, but okay, since they were me, obviously, and I was the good guy. But I did it for like literally 2 or 3 months every day. And I just pictured them in my mind, and I felt like all the resentment. And I just was like, okay, you do it 3 times and that's it. You say it 3 times through. And I got like a text message from Stone right around that time. And he was like, hey, we're playing at the Roxy. I wasn't playing in the band at the time. We'd moved on. We're playing at the Roxy. And would you want to come up and play Buttercup with us, which is this beautiful ballad on the first record. And it's kind of a fan favorite. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That'll be cool. And I talked to Karen, is her name, Rabbi Karen Deitch. She's awesome. Dear friend. And I was like, hey, they asked me to do this, and I'm actually kind of feeling pretty good I feel okay about that. She's like, yeah, I think you're ready for it. I'm like, okay, cool. And so they're playing at the Roxy, legendary, but not like particularly nice club on Sunset Boulevard. And I park that night, and I don't even have a bass with me. Did I bring my bass? No, I think I'm going to play the bass player's bass. Doesn't matter. I'm walking up to the club, and I had this like intense feeling, like revelatory feeling of, oh my God, I love these men. Like, they're my brother. It was crazy. Like, I'm on Sunset Boulevard. I'm like looking around, like, don't look at me. Having a moment here. and it was wild. And then like I'm standing off stage, I'm watching them, and the moment comes, and Stone's like, we want to invite a very special person up on stage. And Brad doesn't have a lot of fans, enough to fill the Roxy. And then, it's a cult band, but they're the kind of fans who know who I am, right? Like, they know everything. They know more than I know, right? And I walk on stage, and the place just goes like, and I see Sean, and I'm like, I put my arms out, and I give him a big hug, and I'm like, I love you. Oh no, he whispers in my ear, I don't hate you anymore. And Louis, my God, Louis is peeing on my carpet while I'm saying this profound thing. I'm going to let him out and finish the story. Holy shit.
I didn't know that we could come back, right? We're on pause, right? For Oscar.
Sorry. Do you guys want me to rewind until like...
Oh, no. So why don't you start so I go up on stage.
Okay. So I go up on stage, and like the crowd goes, and it's like this amazing feeling. And I see Sean, and we embrace. And Sean is the guy, like, we're the ones who had the most conflict, like jealousy. He's the lead singer. I would sing like a song, a record, and we're hugging, and he whispers in my ear, I don't want you anymore. And I was like, I love you, dude. And we hug, and we play Buttercup, and it's magical. And it's like, and that experience was like a completely, like, do I know? I mean, Sean was on his own journey. Do I know that the work that I was doing impacted it? I'm going to say that I do know
Everything is connected.
The world is your mirror, right? So that's the mirror of relationship. And when you change in yourself, it's reflected in your world. It's like, that's why the relationships in your life they're just powerful. Nothing involves you like love.
Totally. And we even know, like I heard this on a podcast the other day, but we even know that like that particles communicate at a distance, right? So I have no doubt that, can't prove it, but I don't doubt that we're all communicating at a distance. And
we're all one. So there's
I have to agree with you there.
Okay, so that turned it into a practice and that you sort of broadened out for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did it on and off throughout the years, and then the plague, which became, and for whatever else it was, to me became this plague of division in so many ways. And that was already happening, right? I mean, and the way the algorithms also work to incite division, it all seemed to sort of bloom into another level during that period. And you had an awakening during the pandemic. I had like another, I don't know if I would call it like a full awakening, but I was like, it was like, oh, this is another layer of revelation to me. Like I might be disagreeing with things, but all the arguing that I've been doing throughout the years, and is not producing anything but more arguing.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if I'm right, which of course I fucking am. Like if my goal is if my goal is like really to spread love and connection, then I might need to change some shit up here, because like this isn't producing it. And that's when I circled back to Ho'oponopono, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to be practicing this on a large level, on, like I need to find those places where these conflicts are happening and be practicing that, so that it can bring, I do believe it contributes to the general, like the field between us. And I certainly know that it contributes to the way that I am going to interact with the individuals that I'm practicing with. I mean, I've experienced that. So it's like, yeah, that's where it went to that place, was during this period of time. And so
listeners, I'm going to spell this for you so you can Google it. HO'Oponopono. Say it for us again, Jeremy.
I think it's Ho'oponopono.
Okay.
Oh, Pono.
So check it out.
Yeah.
If it can change relationships with individuals, but also with the world at large, change your way that you feel about all the theoretical opponents you have out there in the ether. It's worth a look. All right, we are out of time here, Jeremy.
Or thing, even if you don't use it.
Yes, you can.
Okay, because I just wanted to circle very quickly on that, on Ho'oponopono. So the trick of it, and it's also a trap, so that's why I feel like it's like user beware, right? The trick of it is that you're taking responsibility for your role in somebody else potentially falling short of what they could potentially do. Now, of course, it was perfect in the moment, but it's all potentialities, right? And so you may not even be right about it, but that's the way you perceive it, right? Like that's why you're doing it. And so the beauty of it is that it's a larger sense of responsibility. It's like, I'm not just responsible for my own actions. And then I'm going to get into the trap for a second, because I think this is important, because for some people, it's not the thing to do. And then you can use this or not use this. But so the beauty of it is that it's just like, is that suddenly you're like, it's this empowerment of like, oh, I want to be the person who shows up and allows you individual or you as a group to bloom and be your best self. And if I'm showing up and you're lying to me, then I want to actually disentangle the part of myself that is showing up and creating the occasion for that lie from that lie, so that potentially, it doesn't mean you're going to not lie next time to somebody else, but at least that thing is clean of that entanglement. So that's how I've had many conversations about it. That's what I think is going on. That's how I experience it going on. The trap, of course, is that like codependence and these other things. It's like, well, I'm not like people can get into a very like unempowered place where it's like they feel like they're responsible for the alcoholic's actions or whoever it is in their life, and they're not, and they need to be disentangled from that position. That I've been that person, by the way, and I don't think that in that phase this might be the right thing. It's an individual's choice. Like it could throw you down like a dark alley of further codependence that so I just want to say, and some people as a result will be like, that's some fucking bullshit. Like I'm responsible for somebody else ghosting me? What? Anyway, there you go.
That's actually something like we've done that in our relationship. We just kind of fell into it organically, where we both, rather than like if we did have a conflict, we would both look at what we did, not what the other person did. Like, what is this showing me about myself? What did I do that I could do better? And so that's the way our fights would go. They weren't really fights. And it's like, now they don't even happen.
I did one thing early on where I would somehow manage to catch myself on the verge of irritation and turned it around and started mocking my own almost irritation.
Right.
And sort of started laughing at how my capacity for being irritated with someone else. So it's all basically owning your own shit in the end of the day, right?
Totally.
And
There are many paths to it for sure, right? And it's
that and love. It's that and owning your shit and love.
Love more, says
love
Joey.
More, yeah.
Own your shit and love more.
On
which note?
Yeah, right? That's the ultimate. Yeah, I agree.
Jeremy Toback. Listeners, check out Jeremy's solo on Spotify or wherever you listen on. You can find Brad, his when he was in grunge. And if you want to join hundreds of millions of other people, check out Renee and Jeremy on Spotify. You will find some delightful music, and it just keeps coming. Thank you, Jeremy, for A, all that you do, and B, for being our new friend. We're glad to know you.
You're great.
Yeah, thank you guys. Awesome.
Cheers, man.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we're here less than 24 hours after talking to Jeremy there. It's the next day. I love that guy. Jeremy, he's so great.
He is.
I was in the car driving down to see Marguerite play tennis afterwards, and he called and said he forgot to ask me about my views on the nature of time. And we talked for about half an hour about whether time was real and what the practical implications of our thoughts on it were. So he's my new favorite friend because I love talking about that shit all day long. And he's so interesting. He's so sweet. He's funny. I love him.
So is time real or is time not real?
It depends. So if you are living out in the manifestation here where most of us tend to spend our time, then of course it's real. We sort of live on a linear time schedule. But as seen from the center of the universe and reality itself, nothing ever changes. So in ultimate reality, time is not real. So it just depends where you spend your time.
So you might say it's both. It's both real and unreal.
It's both real and unreal. So, right, it just depends how you're feeling. But so listeners, again, go check out, I don't know, some of you might be familiar with Brad. I wasn't. Jeremy had a solo career, put out 3 albums of his own in the late 90s. And Renee and Jeremy, I think, are up to 5, maybe 6 now. Everything's on Spotify. You can find it all there. And if you want a little more on the recent story, check out the piece I wrote about Jeremy on Medium called "The Algorithm ... of Love," because and the point of that piece is that as we're all conditioned to agree on certain things, like Amazon is sending us to hell, or the algorithm is going to ruin everything. It turns out that neither of those things is true. I think what we saw in COVID was that if Amazon delivered everything to everybody and we didn't have to all go shopping, then the atmosphere would be much cleaner. And the algorithm can do things like resuscitate a music career of a couple of people who are trying to spread love. It's great.
So that too depends, right?
Everything depends. So I got one for you. This one I've been waiting to bust out on you now for a little while. It's not a classic. I've got one for you. It's more of a mind bender. It's from Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he makes the following point. Okay, so without food, your body ceases to exist, right? So the stuff you eat feeds the body. Without the body, your consciousness ceases to exist. So the body is the food for your consciousness. Your consciousness feeds on your body. That is why you eat, so that the spirit inside you has a vehicle and sustenance to carry on its way. And my favorite part is that he basically says, so if that's the case, he says that your consciousness is actually the essence of the body. It is the taste of you.
That's pretty good.
Your consciousness is what you taste like. But it's not even that much of a stretch, right? He makes the point. He says if the body disappears, the food disappears, and then the consciousness will also disappear. So the one is food for the one is food for the other. This is not a huge stretch. Your consciousness needs something to feed on.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I guess you could substitute life for consciousness, like the animating force, right? Everyone sort of knows that you've got to feed the body, or the animating force is not going to be there anymore.
Yes, but the reason consciousness is interesting is because in our individualized consciousness, this is the reason that we are all different, is that our bodies and the food that we eat are all different and our experiences are different. So that your consciousness as the taste of you is different than the next person. If you're just saying life force, it seems more general, right? You want to talk about individualized stuff. Okay, so and then to close out here, we don't have a Aurobindo. Haven't been reading much of him these days. Got to get back and read his essays on the Gita for like the 10th time. This is from a translation of something called the Mundaka Upanishad translated by Swami Nikalananda. And he's talking about what happens after death. But the ending is so beautiful. He says, once you're realized, and it's called knowing Brahman, he says, the knower of Brahman after death does not go to any particular plane belonging to the relative universe. His death is often compared to the blowing out of a flame, the total annihilation of the individualized ego. But he does not by any means become non-existent, because Brahman is existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. And here's where it gets great. The knower of Brahman leaves behind no footprint by which he can be traced. As a bird flies in the air, as a fish moves in the water, without leaving any trace, so likewise the illumined soul leaves behind no footprint.
He's good.
I would say that Renee and Jeremy's music comes floating through the place, lightens you up, and leaves no trace behind. It's quiet. It's like a whisper coming through the room, and then it's gone. Thank you, Jeremy Toback. We love your music. We love you, and we'll hope to talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now. Right here, right now. Whoa, right here, right now.
You've been listening to How to Tickle Yourself with your hosts Duff McDonald and Matt McButter. You can help us by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with others. You can talk to us and see what else is happening on Instagram and Facebook at How to Tickle Yourself. This program was recorded in Studio B of the historic Rockledge Recording Studio and the Tunnel Under Arundel. Right here, right now, our original 16-part theme music was written and recorded by the legendary Paul Reddick and Kyle Ferguson of the Sidemen, with the brilliant Steve Mariner on bass and drums and in the mixing room. The podcast is produced and distributed by Storic Media. Our editor is Andrew Steiner. Our coordinator is Samantha Abramovitz. Our producers are Kristen Verbitsky and Chuck LaBella. For more information, visit storicmedia.com. That's STORIC media.com.
My love, my dear, oh, everything's good.